Hi guys. So, haven't really decided whether I'm going to make this video public or private and just share it with a few people. But I'll figure that out later. This video was inspired by a video posted a couple of weeks ago by a YouTuber who I really love called Of Herbs and Altars, also known as Dorian. And they posted a video called "Does anyone else think about this? My weirdest autistic obsession," which I watched and I was super interested. I love hearing about other people's like special interests, and at the end they suggested that if anybody else felt like making a video of their own special interests, then that they'd like to see it. So I thought I'd make a video, because for me, special interests are kind of special. I have a fun little mix of borderline personality disorder and autistic spectrum disorder of some form that's still being decided by those above us. But I've always had some form of special interest, but because of the borderline personality in me, my special interests tend to change, kind of, although I tend to have a couple that are like long running that never change. I'm trying to think what my very first one would have been. It was when I was in primary school, so I must have been younger than 8, and I had an obsession with erasers, rubbers, like rubber erasers. I collected all of them. If I could find an eraser and it was a pretty colour, a different shape, if it had a scent to it, it didn't matter what kind of eraser it was, I wanted it. In fact, I seem to have a memory that I collected a bunch of erasers from my primary school and got told off by my teacher for taking them home to put into my collection. Why else would I take them? But anyway, I would literally sit in my bedroom and just like lay them out on the floor, and like I would put them in the categories that I believe they should be in. And I think those categories tended to change. Like sometimes they would be based on colour, and sometimes it would be based on shape or a collection that I got, all sorts of, different categories. But yeah, I think that was my very first like obsession with anything. And then there probably were others, but nothing like really significant that like actually stayed for like a significant amount of time, until I must have been 14-ish. I'm probably missing some in fairness, but yeah, probably 14. And I used to come home from school, and every day I would walk in and my mum and my stepdad would be sitting in the living room watching the X-Files. So I would get like that feeling of, again, really? So I'd go up to my room and go and find something to do. But needless to say, eventually I ran out of things to do. There's only so much you can do when you're in your room on your own and just, don't have a lot to do. I mean, I don't think I even had a TV in my room at this point. And if I did, it would have only had, like, channels 1 to 4. Does anybody remember 1 to 4? So I remember one day coming in, going upstairs, getting changed, thinking, what am I going to do with myself today? And then you can stop now. Thank you, baby. Shh. I'm busy. Excuse my dogs. They like to join in. Don't you? You like to join in. You can sit and join in, but you can be quiet. Thank you. So, yeah, I remember sitting there thinking, what the heck am I going to do with myself today? And couldn't think of anything. So I went downstairs and I sat on the sofa and I watched part of my very first episode of The X-Files. Yeah. This led to a serious obsession. This was a very, very, very special interest for me. I looked into it so deeply. I spent every penny I could get trying to collect what was at the time all 9 seasons of the show on the DVDs. DVDs, and they came in like little boxes like this, and each season would come in its own box. There wasn't even like a master collection at the time, which I do believe there is now, but at the time they sold each season separately, and they were like £30 each. Like, if I found one for £25 or even £20, it was like the world was going to end if I did not get this season, assuming it was one I didn't have, of course. Eventually I did manage to collect them all, which made my inner autistic very happy, naturally. And I just watched them over and over and over again. I don't think I've ever watched any other show as much as I've watched The X-Files. But it went further than just watching the episodes. It went into learning the trivia, learning things about places that they like filmed certain episodes, learning inspiration that inspired Chris Carter, the creator, and some of the other writers to create the episodes that they did. Then, of course, there was the main characters: Agent Scully, Agent Mulder, Gillian Anderson, David Duchovny. Then, of course, that went into being interested in the actors' lives, and I would watch anything that they were in. It didn't matter what it was. I watched Californication with David Duchovny in, which was awesome. It was a great show, but it's not one I would have probably picked if he had not been in it. And then there was now I can't remember the name of it. Oh, that's gonna bug me. There was a period drama that Gillian Anderson did, and it took me forever to even find it on DVD. And eventually I think I found it on eBay. Somebody was selling it, and I picked it up for like pittance, and I watched that. Now, I was never into period dramas, it was just not my thing, but I watched this particular one because Gillian was in it, and I must admit, actually, it was a really, really good movie. Like, I really enjoyed it, but it's something I would never have picked if it hadn't have been because Gillian Anderson was in it. I mean, my like interest in the X-Files has just been like so long now. I mean, I'm 28, so it's like nearly 15 years. And I I went to London Comic Con and met Gillian Anderson. That was amazing. I'd actually it was really funny actually. I had dermal piercings in my hands here, just below my thumb web. And I'd also just that week got this tattoo. And I remember going to stand up next to her. Now, the I don't know if anyone has been to Comic Con, but when you pay for a photograph with somebody, the organizers are really like rushing you along. Like you go, you stand next to the person that you're meeting, you smile, and you get your photo done, and that's it, you're off. But Gillian, she stopped and she was talking to me, and she was super curious about my dermals, and really like very kind about my tattoo, which was still literally healing. So like it was so new. I had to go to the bathroom at Comic-Con and go and wash it with soap so that I could keep it clean. It was that new. And I was wearing these 5-inch heels because I'm like 5'2". I'm tiny. Well, 5'2.5". The half is important. But Gillian Anderson is the same height. And I was wearing these 5-inch heels, and as I was lining up for my photo, I couldn't see Gillian yet. I started to panic, like, oh my goodness, I'm wearing these heels, like, what if I'm taller than her, like, what if I'm, like, really, like, tall over her, like, what do I do, should I just take them off, like, and I really started to, like, get nervous, and they were really lovely. They were Aldo heels, they were black, with, like, a pink, like, fabric bow on the side. Oh, they were stunning shoes, really, really lovely. And as I walked up, I decided to keep the shoes, by the way. As I walked up to her, I realised that we were like equal height, and I was like, thank goodness. And that was obviously when she started talking about my dermals and this tattoo, and I didn't have any of my other tattoos or anything else by like that time. I just had the 2 dermals in the back of my hands and this tattoo. And she was fascinated by especially the dermals, but she could see that the tattoo was obviously like very new at the time, which was, and she was talking to me for ages, and you could see the people from Comic-Con, their eyes were just like, and they were like, oh my god, would she just stop talking? Like, we need to move on. Like, and you could see them panicking, and somebody tried to like move her on, and Gillian just went carried on talking to me. See, even now I'm fangirling, like, what the heck. Anyway, I also got to meet Mitch Pileggi that same day, so that was amazing. Yeah, I mean, I've had some really like amazing experiences just related to the X-Files. Like, one of my best friends in all the world was somebody I met through. I made a Bebo website. And I had a page on my Bebo discussing the possibility of a second X-Files movie. This goes to show how far back we're talking. There wasn't even a confirmation publicly that it was coming out, but I had heard, I guess through the grapevine, that it was happening. And I got an email from my website one day from a girl asking me if I knew what date the film was coming out. I didn't have a clue what date the film was coming out. I didn't even know if it was definitely coming out, but we got talking. And she was a huge X-Files fan as well, obviously. And we have been friends ever since. She also lives in England, but unfortunately, like 4 or 5 hours like drive from me. But I kid you not, we spoke every single day after like dinner, after school. We would like speak on the phone for hours. Our parents were like pulling their hair out at us because we just did not stop talking. We just always wanted to be like talking. And eventually we did actually meet in person. It's been amazing, and she is honestly, even to this day, one of my absolute best friends. So the X-Files has like been an element in my life for so long. I mean, even random things like when you're watching like game shows, I've had a couple of times, a game show question that's been related to the X-Files or related to one of the actors, and I've answered it, and people around me have looked at me like but yeah, that was a really sort of in-depth interest for me, and that was, I mean, it still is, but it was very intense for a good few years. After that, I mean, I suppose sort of during that time, but after that time, all through that time, I had always dyed my hair. I was forever changing my hair, changing it from one colour to another, from like jet black to platinum blonde in like one day. Like, it's an absolute wonder. I don't honestly know how my hair never it didn't even get damaged. I don't know how it happened. Magic. I mean, I wasn't even using anything like Olaplex in those days. Like, these were like Schwarzkopf box dyes from the supermarket. I mean, if I was really broke, I'm talking like £1 hair dyes from Wilkinson's. Come on. Like, anyway, I was forever changing my hair colour. One of those hair colours that stuck for a really long time was the perfect scully red, of course. But after my interest in the X-Files sort of waned, not like completely, it never went away, but just waned a bit, I got kind of fed up with dyeing my hair, but I always still wanted to change like colours, styles, everything. And I was so fed up with the cost, the physical upkeep, everything that was involved. And so I got into wearing wigs, like fashion wigs. That became a special interest for a while. I was like forever researching different companies to purchase from. I was always seeking out different styles, even like looking for styles that matched like characters that I'd seen in, games, animes, that sort of thing. Even if I hadn't actually watched the full anime, for example, or even played the game all the way through, if I liked the character and how they looked, I would often look for a wig to match their hair because I loved it. It was just that aesthetic I love. I still do. But that didn't last all that long. I mean, actually, I suppose it did really. I mean, I even did some model pictures for a wig seller in China. So yeah, that was pretty crazy. They sent me a few wigs of my choice, and I had photos done in my own living room, funnily enough. You'd be surprised how many models actually have photo shoots done in their own living rooms or kitchens or XYZ. But I remember wearing those wigs. Some of those wigs I wore just in and out. Like, it didn't matter where I was going. I didn't care whether I looked overdressed. I've never subscribed to this whole belief of like overdressed. It's just not something I believe in. Like, I'm one of these people, I truly believe in wearing what you enjoy wearing. If that means that you want to go to ASD in a ball gown, go for it. I've done it because I enjoy wearing pretty clothes, and if I can, I will. I don't care where I'm going. So yeah, wigs was probably the next one. After that, my interest in I suppose like medicine, mental health, health in general became more like pronounced. Like I'd always been interested in medicine. Like, I was always the one, if somebody got hurt, I was the one bandaging them up. Even if I was busy. If somebody was sick and didn't know how serious it was and whether they needed to see somebody, it was me they came to. If somebody didn't know what medication they needed, like over-the-counter stuff, I was the one they asked. And this is like friends, family, that sort of thing. So, I suppose this was probably triggered just by my own experiences in general, because at this point in my life, I'd always had anxiety. I'd had anxiety for as long as I can remember. My first childhood memory is literally of me having a panic attack. Only me. But my thirst for that kind of knowledge became much more like pronounced, I guess, around that time, because my anxiety started to get worse, and it got worse and worse. Like, I mean, there was so many things that were like counting towards that, but even the things that, you know, did add towards that, it still didn't quite make sense why I was so intensely anxious, because it did literally lead to the point of like agoraphobia, constant panic attacks, anxiety attacks that would last days. I mean, just really, really, really intense anxiety. But I think because I was experiencing that, obviously I started to research whether there was anything I could do to help myself, all the while I was also trying to navigate the health system, you know, the national health system in England, which isn't always the easiest thing to do, especially when maybe you're not in the best state of mind. So yeah, I think that was probably when my sort of medical interests became so pronounced, and that has remained to this day. I mean, it's probably been like a good 12 or so years, I think, like going back, counting the houses I've lived in. Like, yeah, probably 10, 12 years. So it went from learning about mental health of my own, you know, anxiety predominantly, and then after one very intense situation, I got my diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. They tried to diagnose me with a lot of other things. I'm not honestly convinced that they're correct, but they also diagnosed me with bipolar 2, which is very rare to have a dual diagnosis of borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder of any form, bipolar 1 or bipolar 2. But hey ho, I mean, I did sit there and think, well, this is me we're talking about, only I could manage this. I should also add, I did already have a diagnosis of an autoimmune disorder, which is also very rare, which is called Behçet's disease, which disorder, people name it the same. And I actually started watching a YouTuber who also had Behçet's, and that's probably where my physical medicine interest came from. Well, not came from, but like increased from. Because she did struggle quite a lot to begin with, but I think she seems to be doing very well from what I understand now. I haven't kept up that much of the last couple of years, but the few videos that I have seen, she seems to be doing very well. But I guess medicine, I mean, it's always been I suppose you could have called it, to start with, a hobby, which then increased, became more intense, and turned into a full-on, like, obsession. I know so much about medicine. It's weird. And I have such a brain for it as well. I mean, it's weird because I've got fibromyalgia, so brain fog is something I deal with on the daily. I forget my words so frequently. Honestly, sometimes I think, like, if my name wasn't on my driver's license, I'd probably forget that too. But to think of the things that I know about medicine, and like the fact that I can, come up with names of medications and drugs and their interactions and dosages, and both their prescribed uses, normal prescribed uses, and like, not like off-label uses, that I can think of so much. It's crazy. And I've given doctors a run for their money on more than one occasion. In fact, a lot of the time, I've discovered a lot of the time doctors don't tend to like people like me who have a lot of medical knowledge, because it makes them feel like you're better at doing their job than they are, which could very well be the case. But anyway, I've had some weird experiences with the medical profession, both good and bad, but hey ho. But over the years, I've picked up so much knowledge from medicine, mental health, and medication in general, treatments, holistics, and otherwise, even I sometimes wonder, like, where it all goes, like, where do I store it in here? I don't know. See, again, this is why special interests are so curious for me, because I've got that borderline personality disorder part of me where it's that swap, change, like, sort of the natural instinct to move on, almost like almost ADHD type action of, like, getting very easily distracted and moving on very quickly. But it doesn't happen so much as, like, quickly. It's like one interest slightly fades out and another slightly fades in, but none of them ever completely go away, which is what is so weird about it. I mean, I don't know, maybe I haven't seen much about people discussing special interests so in depth, but I wonder if other people have the same experience, in that they have multiple special interests that sort of fade in and then fade out a little bit, and then, could sometimes be like, I mean, I've had times where, for example, we'll take the X-Files, it came into my life. I was absolutely crazy for it for years. Over a short while or so, it slowly sort of waned a bit. But every now and again, for example, a couple of years ago when they released a new series of like 6 episodes, it could be reignited in me, and it brought it all back. So I don't know whether that's just the mixture of the two, like, you know, sort of borderline personality side of me and the autistic side of me, or whether it's what everybody on the spectrum experiences, but I'd be curious to know. I suppose after that, the only other special interest I've had and remain having is animals. I have an absolute affinity for animals. So much so. I've always been like it. I mean, I was that kid that would be sitting in the garden and a butterfly would come and like land on my arm and just sit there. You know, I was always the kid that would find a bird that was, hurt or injured in some way, or ill or something, and either try and sort of nurse it back to health myself, or take it somewhere where they could nurse it back to health. I've had, since childhood, this is so many many years now, but I've had rabbits, I've had hamsters, I've had multiple cats, dogs, he says, looking at the 3 chihuahuas that are completely zonked out on the bed. These 3 chihuahuas, they are literally chihuahuas, chihuahua-sized chihuahuas, and yet they take up more space in a double-sized bed than I do. Anyway, yeah, animals is probably the only other thing that I could say I'm completely obsessed with. I've had snakes, I've had fish, I'd love to have ferrets. My housemate's not too keen, and I'm like, next time you go out, you might come back to 2 new housemates. I don't know, I probably won't, not until at least halfway through the year. No, I've been wanting ferrets for a couple of years now. I haven't decided. I'm undecided, because I've still got 2 cats, and I've still got my 3 chihuahuas, and my housemate has his own dog. So it can be a lot of work, and with my physical illnesses, I've got, as I said, fibromyalgia, and Behçet's, which is predominantly flare-up based, but can have some other complications as well. But what I also didn't mention is I also have POTS. So getting up, walking around, just mobility in general, with the mixture of the lightheaded dizziness of POTS and the pain of fibromyalgia, it's not that easy for me. So I'd probably wait until I can hopefully get my physical conditions more under control before I look at getting any form of pets that need a cage cleaning out. Maybe. I guess it depends on how much I bribe my housemate with, right? But yeah, I mean, those are my special interests. Can't say I've really got much else. I mean, I've always been obsessed with makeup, but I think that's such a common one. I don't even know that I class it as a special interest. I just class it as I'm a person who likes pretty things, you know, and that, yeah, I mean, those are the ones that I can say really stick into my mind, and those are the ones that tend to get like reignited every now and again. I'm quite curious to see what maybe I suppose my next special interest, because they do seem to come and go. I mean, come and wane. So yeah, I've rambled way too long. My phone is going to absolutely hate me saving this video, but I'm going to do it anyway. Goodness knows how long it's going to take to upload to anything, especially YouTube. But this one's for you, Dorian. Your fault. If I'm still sat here at 3 a.m, I'm hitting you up because it's your fault. So yeah, that was my special interests. That is a rather interesting story for me because of my diagnoses. I'd love to know what other people experience with their own diagnoses, whether I'm the only one that tends to switch and change, or you know, whether other people do the same. But there you go. Thank you very much for watching. If I make another video, I would love to see you back. If you have any special interests yourself, I'd love to hear what they are. You can email me or drop it down in the comments. Other than that, I'll speak to you presently.